They say winter can steal a man's soul, but it's the things left behind when the snow melts that haunt you longer. I remember the day my world turned, sideways snow biting at my eyes, a railroad platform already empty, and three women clutching suitcases as if whatever was inside might anchor them in place. If you'd told me then that night, wind howling through the eaves, fire out cold in the pot-belly stove, I'd end up choosing between what's right, what's easy, and what I could live with, well, I might have laughed. Or maybe I'd have spit and kept on walking. But hell, let's start with the real shock. I once stood toe-to-toe with a fancy lawyer out on my own porch, rifle over the door and my boots still muddy, while he told me the three women under my roof were nothing but property, and I told him he could choke on the law for all I cared. You want to know how a man ends up there? I'll tell you, but I warn you, it's a crooked road, paved with pride, debt, and the ache of wanting to belong somewhere. My name's James Callahan, and the year the story starts, my ranch was tucked so far out in the hills, you'd miss it if you blinked. Folks called me quiet. They meant broken after I lost my wife. But out here, silence is its own kind of shield. That day, the sheriff sent word about a sorry mess up at the train depot. Three women, strangers, left behind like lost freight, after some cattle baron decided he'd had enough of them. Word was, they'd all been his wives, married out of duty, tossed aside for failure. Failure in that world meaning nothing more than empty bellies and empty cradles. I never planned on taking anybody in, but when Tommy, my youngest hand, brought them up the hill in an old wagon, snow dripping off the canvas and mud caked to the wheels, I saw it plain. Life had already thrown its worst at these women, and they were still standing. Martha, my housekeeper, tough as saddle leather, just grunted, handed out mugs of coffee, and herded them to the fire. Didn't take but one glance to know they weren't sisters or friends. The oldest, Maybelle, wore worry lines deep as riverbeds, her hands marked from kitchen burns. She didn't flinch, not even when I caught her eye, just squared her shoulders like a woman used to bad news. Eunice, tall, with a chin that said, "I dare you," looked at me like I was just another wolf in the woods. And Nora, small, bird-like, hair curling from the cold, wouldn't meet my gaze at all. "I don't keep strangers under my roof," I told them, leaning against the mantel, not looking for sympathy. "But I'm not sending women out into the cold." It was Maybelle who answered. "We'll work for our keep. We just need a place until the road's clear." The way she said it, like pride alone might keep the snow off their backs, made me nod. Martha took over then, and that was that, for a while. Those first weeks were as brittle as river ice. I kept my distance, rode fence at dawn, worked the herd by day, came home late, and ate alone. At night, I'd listen to them talk in the east wing, their voices drifting through the cracks beneath the doors, soft, sharp, sometimes nothing at all. In a house built for silence, you notice the way a new laugh sounds, the way a kettle boils a little longer before someone remembers to take it off. It didn't take the town long to start talking. Mrs. Hargrove at the general store called it a scandal. 3 abandoned wives living with a bachelor. Pastor's wife cornered Martha at the dry goods counter, voice all honey and poison. Martha just snorted. "He takes in stray calves with better manners than you." she said, and that was the end of it. Or so we hoped. Trouble has a way of finding its own level, and sure enough, it trickled back to the ranch. One night at supper, I set my plate aside, jaw tight, and told them, "If anyone asks, you're workers here, not wives, not charity cases." Maybelle just nodded. We never wanted to cause trouble. Her eyes said the rest. She'd seen too much of it already. But the thing about letting folks stay is, they have a way of settling in, whether you mean for it or not. Maybelle stitched up a ranch hand's busted ankle. He left a tin of salve on her windowsill in thanks. Nice patched tack no one else would touch. Nora found herself teaching the ranch kids their letters, her voice steady, gentle, the sound of it softening the corners of the old house. Still, there were secrets thick as smoke between us. Sometimes I'd catch Maybelle looking at a box of old letters, my late wife's, buried deep in a drawer. She never asked, but I saw her fold one with care, as if sorrow could be smoothed like creased paper. Eunice kept pride wrapped around her like a cloak, but when she slipped on the ice and bruised her wrist, I helped her up. She barked at me, "I'm fine," but let me steady her just the same. Nora, well, Nora was the quietest of all. One night, I found her at the old piano in the parlor, fingers hovering above the keys, not playing, just remembering. That next week, I sent for a tuner out of my own pocket. She played, hesitant, until the notes grew strong enough to reach down the hallway. Sometimes I'd stop outside the door, just listening. Her music made the house breathe again. Spring thawed the hills slow that year. Days grew longer, birds returned, and the soil softened under boot. The women stayed. Maybelle talking about reopening the old schoolhouse, Eunice sketching saddle rigs for the blacksmith, Nora teaching and keeping to herself. I never asked them to go, and they never asked to stay. It was an uneasy truce, but it worked until the law came knocking. It was Broderick's brother, Caleb Brick, slicker than rain on glass, silver buttons shining. He showed up with papers, talking about property and marital claim. He stood there, reading from the scroll, acting like 3 breathing women could be counted same as horses. I planted my boots hard on the porch and stared him down. "You come on my land with courtroom talk," I said. "But out here, law runs on decency, not ledgers." Eunice stepped forward, chin high. "He's dead to us, same as if he buried us alive." Caleb just smiled that tight little smile of men who've never shoveled a day's dirt. "You're still his wives. That status doesn't dissolve because of bruised feelings." Maybelle crossed her arms. "That man never touched us with kindness, never touched any of us except to take something." I looked at Caleb. "You can turn that horse around and get yourself gone, or you can test your luck against 40 ranch hands and a sheriff who owes me more than a handshake." Caleb paled, eyes darting from my rifle above the door to the women behind me. "I'll be back," he hissed, but we all knew he wouldn't. That night, the ranch was still, but I could feel the strain like a taut rope about to snap. The next morning, I found a letter on the kitchen table. Nora's handwriting, soft and careful. She'd packed up, planning to leave before anyone could stop her. Said she couldn't wait for something I'd never say out loud. Maybelle pressed the letter into my hands. "If she walks away without knowing you care, she'll never come back." sometimes a man needs a push. I saddled my chestnut mare, rode hard down the road under a sky bruised with morning. I found Nora walking, clutching that little wooden horse I'd carved her, boots muddy, dress catching the dew. I dismounted and called her name. She turned, eyes wide but dry. "You shouldn't be out here," I said, heart pounding harder than any stampede. "Neither should you," she answered, voice tight. "I'm not running." I took a step closer, words thick on my tongue. "You thought I didn't see you, but I did. I spent years thinking silence would keep me safe, but it only kept me alone. I buried a wife. I buried half my heart with her. I didn't know if I had enough left to give." She stared at the ground. "I never asked for more than what you had." I pressed a ring into her palm, plain silver, no stone. "I carved the horse because I couldn't say how I felt. I brought this because I'm ready to." My hand shook a little, not from cold, but from everything I'd never said. Nora met my eyes, steady, brave. "If I stayed, would you keep your distance forever?" "Not anymore," I promised. I took her hand, wrapped it around the ring, pressed it to my chest so she could feel the truth of it. We rode back in silence, side by side. At the ranch, Maybelle and Eunice waited on the porch, arms crossed, grins fighting not to show. Martha opened the door, steam from the kettle curling into the dawn. Inside, it was warm again. Warm in the way a place is when it belongs to you. That's where I'll stop the tale, right at the moment the world shifted. Because sometimes justice is just a man choosing to stand his ground, for himself, for the people he lets in, and for the kind of home he wants to build out of ashes and snow. You want to know if it all turned out happy? Well, some stories don't ever truly end.